Welcome to my show. Is a guest here. His name is Shalom Damabel. Mr. Shalom, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much, Mr. Shalom. Firstly, you are a kinesis. That means you are a body language expert. Can you please, Mr. Shalom, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mr. Shalom?
Yeah, so my name's Shalom Damabel. I'm a specialist. I help people and businesses decode human behavior for success. I teach them about the importance of their body language, as well as how they can use body language to help them in the leadership, presentations, interviews. I also tell them how to decode nonverbals from pacifiers to signals of engagement, disengagement, and all things body language, human behavior.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shalom. Body language is lost like one step ahead of someone, honestly speaking. And I saw you have a book which is Speak Without Words. Can you please, Mr. Shalom, discuss more about that book? And do you have more book you are planning to write in the coming future, Mr. Shalom?
So as of now, I have released one ebook with, as you said, it's called Speak Without Words. In that ebook on Gumroad, I have it linked on my LinkedIn profile. If you were to check that out, you can learn just all the fundamentals of body language, why it's important. I have some photos in there so you can see and understand the behaviors I'm talking about. I discuss about pacifiers. I talk about um, entrepreneurs who fail to be noticed because they fail to understand body language. And I even talk a little bit about being able to somewhat accurately spot deception. And so you can learn a lot of good information in that book. It's just packed with knowledge and information. And so, yeah, I have it in my LinkedIn profile. In the future, not as of now, but in the future, I do plan on writing a more thorough and longer book to actually teach people about body language and human behavior. But yeah, as of now, I have one ebook, Speak Without Words, on Gumroad.
That's a very, very impressive one. I will definitely be expecting more books like that in the coming future, Mr. Shalom. I would like to dive to the point of the body language. Body language is a very sensitive topic, honestly speaking, because body language have to deal with non-verbal cues, something that deals with the body, Mr. Shalom. So how do you think is reliable? How do you think reliable is body language in determining if someone is probably lying or saying some things that are not true? And do you think someone can control their body when they lie, Mr. Shalom?
I mean, body language is extremely important. In fact, I would go to say that someone's body language means more to me than the actual words, right? Because people practice lying with their words a lot more than they practice lying with their actual body language. And the thing I always tell people is the body language is a reflection of what's going on internally. So if you feel confident inside, that will be manifested with your body language. And if you feel less confident, less comfortable inside, it'll also be showed with your body language. You're probably gonna slump a little bit, not be taking up as much space around you. Um, so think about the deception and being able to tell when someone is lying. Most people can only spot deception with about 54% accuracy. So it is very hard in general. There isn't a single behavior that you can pinpoint and be able to tell when somebody is lying. However, there are some subtle cues that could perhaps lead you closer to being able to accurately tell. So I'll share a few of those now. The thing I look for the most is emphasis. It's people who are truthful, genuinely, typically emphasize their words non-verbally and also verbally. And so emphasis shows that someone is committed to what they're saying. People who are deceitful, they lack commitment in what they're saying because even they know that it's not true. But if you believe in your words, naturally and effortlessly, you will emphasize. So emphasis can look something like this. It could be like leaning forward, you're trying to make a point. It could be like a little eyebrow raise, even hand gestures. People who are more confident what they're saying typically use more hand gestures in their words. And verbally, people emphasize with repetition and the tone of the voice. I also tend to look for pacifying behaviors. Pacifiers are the behaviors that we do to soothe ourselves when we feel discomfort. So it won't automatically mean that someone is lying. However, if you see an increase in those pacifiers, it can kind of tell you that you may want to dig more deeply, a lot of things. And what I also tell people is just honestly, if I see someone speaking with the hands over the mouth, to me that could indicate that they aren't as confident and committed to what they're saying. I've also even seen people when they're being deceptive, they might even like raise their shoulders a little bit higher, shows uncertainty in their words. And then last but not least, I've also noticed that people who are being deceitful and untruthful, oftentimes they struggle to answer simple questions, like yes or no questions. And instead, they opt to answer your question with another question. So, for example, if you go to your coworker and you say, "Did you eat my lunch in the fridge?" Instead of saying yes or no, they might just say something like what lunch or your lunch in the fridge. Like those simple things you can look out for to be able to more accurately tell when someone's lying. They're not, bulletproof fire ways to always be able to tell, but those are behaviors that can get you closer to the truth.
Hmm. What you said now is very, very powerful. This body language, covering normal and stuff like that are definitely really, really powerful cues that would definitely say a lot of details. And I would like to dive to the point of culture. There are different culture around the world, and definitely the way every single person are trained in their culture is trained in different ways. So I would like to dive to that point. How do you think different cultures, Mr. Shalom, express deception through body language, Mr. Shalom?
I mean, generally speaking, there is a universal hypothesis which suggests that people all over the world, they can kind of subconsciously be able to sort of decode human behavior. So for example, even people who are blind, even they use the same behaviors as someone who can see. People who are in very disconnected tribes, even they use the same behaviors that I'm speaking of. So being able to detect deception, typically that is in the body language, typically that is represented all throughout cultures. There are some, like, not about deception, but there are some subtle cues that I do teach that happen to be different in other places. So for example, I tell people that like a head tilt with a triple head nod typically gets the other person talking about 3 to 4 times longer. So if you want to become a better listener and be able to connect with others, just tilt your head a little bit, expose the neck area, and a slow triple head nod will get the other person talking for longer. However, I know in some cultures, I think Bulgaria in particular, I know there's a few others that may be missing, perhaps somewhere around India, but those are like the few exceptions where if you do that, it may be interpreted differently um, in those areas. But typically around the world, especially in Western cultures, these body language hacks that I teach on LinkedIn and TikTok, they are usually almost universal.
That's very, very insightful. Thank you so much for the insight, Mr. Shalom. I would like to dive to the point of natural body language and deceptive body language. When it comes to natural, it's natural. Deceptive might be more intense, if I'm correct. But what do you feel or what do you think are the key difference between a natural body language and a deceptive body language, Mr. Shalom?
So those was kind of what I was saying earlier about the nonverbal emphasis of your words. Because people can try to lie with their body. Oftentimes, it usually comes out unnatural or just looks a little bit too forced, which makes it easier to be able to actually tell that perhaps that person isn't being as truthful with you. But this so I'll say it like this: confident body language. This one is confident in the words. You may see. I tell people to maximize the distance between the earlobe and the shoulder. I tell people to expose the chest area and the torso area. I tell people to kind of pop out the chest a little bit higher, raise the chin just slightly. It makes you look more confident what you're saying, as opposed to if you were tucking the chin to up in the neck area like that. So those are some 3 tips that have confident body language, confident posture. When someone lacks confidence in what they're saying, that will be reflected in the body through slumped shoulders. Usually, the arm movements of someone who is lying to you are more restricted. So like they're less likely to gesture, and instead with their hands they might pacify instead of gesturing. And then they're also less likely to touch other things around them, like objects. So the arm movements are a lot more restricted in people who are deceptive.
That means the natural ones and the hand movement, which is more deceptive, are very, very important for one to definitely look out for when someone definitely looking at and the terms of body language. Thank you so much, Mr. Shalom, for that insight. I would like to also dive to the point of stress or probably nervousness. I do not know. Probably stress could be a way or a tool for body language. Do you feel like stress, affects deceptive body language? Do you think there's any way stress or probably nervousness affects it in the way someone could read it, Mr. Shallow?
Well, that's actually why I believe being able to tell when someone's lying is so extremely difficult. Because a lot of times, deceptiveness and nervousness look identical, which is why that's often hard to tell. Someone could be exuding deceptive body language because they're nervous. Even though they're nervous, they're being honest, right? So being able to actually tell the difference between deception and nervousness is extremely hard to do, which is why on average, that was person can only really tell um, truthfulness with like a coin toss. It's like half half, and so that's why it's so difficult. Nervous body language will be exuded through pacifiers. Once again, those are the behaviors that we use to soothe ourselves. And so there's so many different ways people pacify themselves. Some of the most common ones that I see are just like a stroking of the chin, like this. Oftentimes, men tend to touch their face area. Women tend to touch like the part of the body that's a little bit higher than the breast area, the jewelry and things like that. So you also see this is more common in men. They also might grab this little place right under the chin, just very quickly, very subtly. A lot of times I see this in my personal life as well. It's like really touching of the earlobe, massaging the earlobe a little bit. It can even be with the palms, rubbing the thighs a little bit. And one of the most common ones are about the lips. People, when they're nervous, so when you're nervous, at times the lips begin to dry a little bit. And so you see people just like lick the lips a little bit, something like that. And I think if you look out for those behaviors, you can be able to tell when someone is nervous. Once again, it's not really indicative of deception, although it could be. So that's why I always tell people it's very important to not like rush to call someone a liar because you really never know. It's very hard to tell when someone's lying because a lot of times it may just be they're nervous or they're shy.
Thank you so much for that insight, Mr. Shalom. Body language goes in different areas. Even definitely there will even be a course that definitely teach this type of things, and making someone understand that, someone might be nervous and it might not just be the area probably of lying or probably they are saying something that's right. It might be nervousness, it could be probably nervousness that could be happening in those areas. So it is extremely difficult to definitely read stuff like that. Probably those who have more experience, more expertise could definitely get more details and stuff like that in getting that person with the right message, but it's definitely difficult to do. So it's definitely probably not right to just conclude in some type of body language if one just have it. So thank you so much for that insight, um, Mr. Shalom. Lastly, Mr. Shalom, I would like to dive to the point of business negotiation and IAM process. Do you think or do you feel like body language are also being read during business negotiation and also IAM process, Mr. Shalom?
Yeah, so body language is important in general, but especially if you are a leader, a person of power, or you're doing business. Because if you have confident body language, people automatically think that you have a reason to be confident. As opposed to if you are slumped, people are going to think that honestly you have a reason to be slumped because you haven't really accomplished anything. And so there are some stories about people whose body language may have cost them a lot. And the thing I always say is you have to look like a leader, be treated like a leader. And so there's a cool story about that as well. 1960, this was the election. So it was Kennedy versus Nixon. This was the very first televised debate for the election. And because it was 1960, people had TVs or radios, but TVs weren't as common. So it's either they listened on the radio or they watched it live on the TV. However, it's funny because the people who heard the election on the radio, they all believed that Nixon had won the debate. However, the people who actually watched it with their eyes live on TV, they all thought that was Kennedy who won the debate. And the reason for that is because the difference in their body language between the two candidates could not have been more extreme. So if you look it up on YouTube and watch it, if you watch that, you can see that Kennedy sat with his straight back, shoulders back, his feet were firmly planted on the ground, his arms are calmly resting in his lap, and he gazed directly into the cameras. As opposed to Nixon, he kind of had these jerky movements, which made him look less confident. He had what we call runner's feet, which when you have one foot back and one foot forward, as if you're about to like walk away. I also kept looking all over the place. So instead of just holding a direct gaze to the cameras, was kind of like this, where he was looked nervous, looked uncomfortable, looking all over the place. And all those things hurt his credibility. Which is why the people who watched the debate live, even though he may have had better spoken words than Kennedy, people who watched it live all believed that Kennedy was the winner because he had better body language than Nixon did. And later on in his memoir, so Nixon wrote a memoir, and later in that memoir, he stated that his bad body language in that election, he believes was one of the reasons that cost him that presidential debate.
That means body language is very, very important. Definitely, if one can definitely build his confidence and live a life of honesty, I think those body language would not definitely be a issue. But those who knows how this body language works, just like you, so definitely it could be a very, very good advantage that really works well. And lastly, Mr. Shalom, there's a question I normally ask during the end of the show. From our forefathers, there are a lot of things that do exist during our forefathers' time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, Mr. Shalom, what do you think that thing would be, Mr. Shalom?
Bringing back something from the past, I would say, is a tad bit difficult to actually manage. However, I would say that if I could remove something from right now and make it to how it was, I think I would take away people's obsession with cell phones and to technology. Because I think those things have its place, and when used correctly, it can be a great tool. However, we have seen it's like the rise of like depression in teens and stuff like that. We have seen those as absolutely skyrocket since the uprise of social media. I think that's one of the things that people like 100 years ago, they were just better at than we are now. Without as many distractions in their lives as opposed to now. I think that has had a significant effect on our mental health as a whole and the way we live life. So I think if that's one thing that I feel like we could perhaps get better at and perhaps start to mimic the older generations better.
Yes, I completely agree with you. You know, during that time, there was a lot of community. Most of the time, a person can be born in a place, live, marry, have better family, and even die in that place. But now, if that phone is there, that person is everywhere. And anything that is happening anywhere in the world, that person can know it. So everything is definitely different, which give a lot of rise in probably anxiety, depression, and even society that's also really dramatically increased. We definitely hope for the best in the coming future, more better things, more greater things that will definitely bring back some sense of community, sense of touching that will definitely improve one life because that thing we really need it. So I almost completely thank you for the time and the opportunity of speaking on body language. And just, speaking on stuff that someone needs to know, I'm living a life of, this body language is definitely not an easy one, but I want to thank you for the opportunity and the time you've given me, Mr. Shalom. Thank you so much, sir.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a wonderful day, Mr. Shalom. Bye bye.
You as well. Take care.